Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. So today we're diving into a really powerful book by the sociologist Pierre Bourdieu. It's called Acts of Resistance Against the New Myths of Our Time. And it's one of those books that gets right to the heart of a very modern, and let's be honest, a very frustrating political reality. And what is that frustration? Well, it's this question. Why does it so often feel like our governments are working against themselves? You know the feeling, right? It's like one government department is creating problems that another one is just desperately trying to solve. Bourdieu gives us this brilliant framework for understanding this exact contradiction. See, he argues that the state isn't just one single unified thing. Nope. He asks us to imagine it as an institution with two fundamentally opposed parts, what he calls the state's two hands.
Okay, so let's break this down. On one side, you've got what he calls the left hand. This is the part of the state that actually spends money to help people. We're talking about teachers, social workers, the folks who run public services. They're on the front lines dealing with the real-world fallout of economic problems. But then you've got the right hand. This is a whole different world. Think Ministry of Finance, big banks, the technocrats. Their job isn't to solve social problems. Their job is to enforce fiscal discipline. To put it simply, they're there to save money, not spend it.
And here's where Bourdieu's insight is so powerful. He says this isn't just some abstract mechanical conflict. It's a very human crisis of purpose. The people who make up that left hand feel completely abandoned. It's like their entire mission is being constantly undermined by this right hand that seems totally disconnected from the real-world consequences of its decisions. So you've got these two hands, right? And they're in this constant tug-of-war. But here's the kicker. Bourdieu argues that for the last few decades, this hasn't been a fair fight. The power dynamic has shifted, big time. One side has been systematically winning.
And this shift isn't random at all. Under the logic of neoliberalism, a very predictable pattern unfolds. First, the entire conversation shifts so that budgetary restraint and competitiveness are the top priorities. Then, the right hand, the finance people, gets the final say on all policy. This puts immense pressure on the left-hand services, which are told to fix growing social problems with shrinking budgets. And finally, all the messy consequences, rising inequality or job insecurity, they're just framed as regrettable but necessary side effects of economic reality. And this is such a crucial point because it gets at a huge misconception. The state doesn't actually disappear or shrink under all this pressure.
Instead, it transforms. Its entire function changes. It starts pulling back from social support and doubles down on its economic and punitive roles. It stops being a safety net and starts being an enforcer for market logic.
Now, how do you pull off a massive transformation like that? It doesn't just happen. You need to justify it. You need to make it seem natural, inevitable. And that's done with powerful language and ideas, what Bourdieu calls the new myths of our time.
Just think about a word we hear constantly. Globalization. Bourdieu says, hold on a second. That word isn't just a neutral description of how the world works. He calls it a myth, a powerful discourse. It's an idea that has real social force, and it's used to justify policies that demand huge sacrifices from ordinary people.
And he says the same thing about neoliberalism. He doesn't see it as just how the economy works. He calls it a political utopia, a project designed specifically to dismantle collective structures, like unions or public welfare. And the genius of it is that it's all disguised in the language of pure, objective economic science.
So by framing what are actually political choices as if they were just natural laws of the universe, this ideology manages to hide the real human price tag of its policies.
And what is that price? Well, when the right hand's logic takes over, the consequences are painfully predictable, aren't they? You see, growing job insecurity, temporary work everywhere. Public services get sold off. Those social protections that took generations to build get dismantled. All the while, the state itself becomes more punitive and way less supportive.
The thing is, none of this is an accident. It's not just a string of bad luck. Bourdieu is crystal clear on this. It's the completely predictable outcome when you redesign the entire state around a new set of priorities.
And that right there is really the core of his argument. His analysis lets us finally connect the dots. All these things that seem like isolated problems, a crisis in public housing over here, a strained school system over there, they're not separate failures. They are all symptoms of one single coherent political project at work.
Once you see that internal division, that struggle between the two hands. It helps resolve our own crisis in perception. We can see the system's logic, which of course leaves us with a pretty provocative question. If a system's design consistently produces these kinds of outcomes, can we really call them accidental?
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.